On today's video, I'm going to show you how to make 3 different pattern block: the basic bodice block, the skirt block, and a sleeve block. This is a super beginners friendly video, and if that sounds like something you're interested in, let's get right into it. So we're going to start off with our basic bodice block, and for that the measurements we're going to need is our shoulder measurement, our bust measurement, our waist measurement, our nipple to nipple measurement, our shoulder to bust point, and our shoulder to waistline measurement. Now to start the drafting, I'm going to go ahead to come out from this point by 1 inch. I'm going to do this vertically and horizontally as well, just to come out from the pattern paper before we start taking our measurements, so you see everything clearly. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark my full measurement for this basics block. I'm going to mark from my shoulder to my waist measurement, which is 17 inches. I'm going to mark this across and then rule a line. Next, we're going to go ahead to mark our shoulder line divided by 2, and for me that is 7.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 7.5 inches across. Next, we're going to move on to mark our shoulder to bust point measurement. For me that is 11 inches. I'm going to mark that across, and then we're going to rule a straight line. Now from our shoulder line we marked here, we're going to come down by 1 inch for our shoulder slope. After marking that out, you want to go down from that point and mark your armhole depth. For me that is 7.5 inches. To get your armhole depth, you can divide your shoulder measurement by 2 or your bust measurement divided by 4. So now I'm going to mark that out, and then we're going to rule a straight line at that point to create our armhole. Next, we're going to create our neckline. So from this point we're going to mark 3 inches for the width, and then we're going to mark 3 inches for the depth. So this is going to be a basic neckline, which is 3 by 3 inches. I'm going to mark this across and then create a square shape at that point. This is going to help you create a precise neckline. Now from that 3 inches line we made, we're going to slant this to meet our shoulder slope to create the shoulder line area. So this is what we have. Now I'm going to use my curve to just create the shape of our neckline, so you can see what we have right there. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark my bust measurement divided by 4, and I'm going to mark that out on my chest line here. So you want to mark your bust measurements divided by 4. Now on the waistline area, I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4. Now I'm not going to connect the lines immediately because we're going to add our dart and then return the dart we take before we go ahead to rule them out to meet each other. So now I'm going to extend the line for our chest line. I'm going to rule out a straight line at that top point, the way you see me doing right now. Next, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. For me it is 8, so 8 divided by 2 is 4. I'm going to mark 4 inches on the waistline area as well as on the bust point area, and then we're going to rule a straight line across. Now we want to go ahead to take out our dart, and the dart you take out is dependent on the size of your bust. If you're a smaller bust, you can take out ½ inch on both sides, but for me my bust is slightly big, so I'm going to take out 0.5 inch on both sides. So I'm going to mark that out and then draw our dart to meet with our bust point line. Now you want to take note of what you have on your dart line area here, and then we're going to return it back to this place here just so our measurement is complete. And after returning our dart, we're going to trace the lines now to meet each other. So you can see that I'm tracing this out like this. Now we're also going to create our shoulder dart. I'm going to place my tip on my shoulder area here, and whatever I have there, I'm going to divide it into two. So I'm dividing that into two, and I'm going to mark the midpoint, which is about 2.5 inches. I'm marking the midpoint, and then we're going to, from that midpoint line we have there, we're going to rule this back to our bust point area. Now on the dart leg for our shoulders, we're going to take out the dart there also. So we took out 0.5 inches at the bodice area. We're going to take out 0.5 inches on both sides as well. So I'm going to take that out, and then we're going to retrace this back to the bust point area the way we did earlier. So this is what we have for our bust dart as well as our waist dart. Now we're going to cut this out of the remaining pattern so we can work on this better. So guys, after taking out the dart on this point here, we want to go ahead to return our dart back to this point so our measurement is complete. And to do this, I want to go ahead to just fold up the dart we've taken out. We're going to close it up, and then after closing this up, we're going to retrace our shoulder line. So the shoulder points there, we're going to go ahead to trace it out. After retracing the line, we're going to go ahead to return the 1.5 inch that we took back to this point here, and then we're going to trace out our armhole. So I'm going to use my curve for this. We're going to go ahead from that point to just retrace our armhole. So guys, we've successfully created our waist dart and our shoulder dart. I'm going to go ahead to show you how to create your bust dart. So for your bust dart, you want to take the difference between your front shoulder to waist and your back shoulder to waist, and then you subtract it to get your difference. So for me, the front of my shoulder to waist is 17 inches, while my shoulder to the waist for the back is 15.5 inches. So 17 minus 15.5 inches is going to give us 1.5 inch. So I'm marking that 1.5 inch on this point here, and then we're going to rule a straight line back to our bust point area the way you see me doing right now. So now I'm going to go ahead to just retrace this line here. So guys, we've gone ahead to create 3 different darts. I'm just cancelling them out like this so you see the darts clearly. So you can work with 1 dart, you can work with 2 darts depending on what you're trying to create. So now if you go ahead to close up your shoulder dart, you can see that the bodice isn't sitting properly. So we're going to go ahead to slit the waist dart area to just transfer the dart from our shoulder down to the waist area. So I'm going to slit it open to show you what it looks like. So this is what we have. You can see that I've gone ahead to transfer the shoulder dart to the waistline area. The same thing goes for the bust dart if you're trying to close up the dart or transfer the dart to another side of your bodice. So I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So when you're cutting out your bodice and you get to where you have your dart, you want to go ahead to close it up before you cut it out the way you see me doing right now. So we're going to go ahead to cut everything out so you can see what we have after doing that. So now I'm just basically going to cut out the remaining part of my pattern. So guys, we are done drafting out the front part of our basic bodice block. We're going to move on to draft the back. I'm going to leave this like this, so whenever I'm trying to draft out anything or create any pattern, I can just work with this one to just manipulate it the way I want. So for the back pattern, we've gone ahead to rule out all our lines the way we did for the front. The only difference is the shoulder to waist measurement for the front is different from the shoulder to waist measurement for the back because of our bust at the front. So this is what we have basically for the back. So now we're going to start off by creating our back neckline. So for the back, I normally just use a standard of 1 inch at the back depending on what we're doing, but because this is a basic bodice, I'm going to use a standard of 1 inch, and then we're just going to create that shape the way we did for the front and then curve it out. Now we're going to take out our back dart. We're going to mark our nipple to nipple measurement divided by 4 again for the back as well, and then we're going to create a straight line to create our dart leg. Now on both sides of the dart leg, we're going to take out half of an inch, and then we're going to roll it all the way up. Now I'm going to go ahead to add my bust measurement divided by 4 on this line here, and then we're going to mark our waist measurement divided by 4 on our waistline. And after marking that, we want to go ahead to return the dart we took back on this point here, and then we're just going to roll this out. Now we want to go ahead to create our armhole, and if you don't have this curve here and you're trying to create your armhole, all you have to do is take note of what you have there. What I have is 7.5 inches. We're going to divide that into 2, and then we're going to mark that as our midpoint. So after marking that out, you want to go in from that point by half of an inch and just mark it out, and then from this point you curve it all the way. So that is going to be an easy way for you to create that curve without your curve ruler. So now I'm just going to go ahead to create my curve, as you can see. So this is what we have for the back piece. I'm just going ahead to trace out the remaining parts of our bodies, and I'm also going to add zipper allowance to this. So this allowance here is going to serve as our zipper allowance. So I'm just going to trace out everything and then label it. So this is our basic bodice for the back. So this is what we have for our basic bodies. Now we're going to move on to draft the basic skirt pattern as well. So for our basic skirt pattern, the measurements we're going to need is our waist to hip line, and then our waist to the full length of our skirt. We're also going to need our waist round measurement and our hip round measurement. So guys, we've gone ahead to rule out the lines at the sides, as you can see, just so you see where our measurement is going to start from. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out the full length of our skirt, and for me, I'm working with 26 inches as the full length of my skirt. I'm going to go ahead to mark 26 inches across, and then I'm going to rule a straight line. Next, we're going to mark our hip line measurement. So this is the distance between your waist to your hip. So for me, it is 8 inches. I'm going to go ahead to mark out 8 inches across and rule a line as well. Next, we want to go ahead to divide this pattern because we're drafting the front and back piece together here. So I'm going to divide my hip measurement divided by 2. That is going to give me 20.5 inches. I'm going to add ½ inch to that for ease, and it's going to give me 21 inch. So I'm going to mark out 21 inch across this line the way you see me doing right now, and then we're going to rule a straight line. Next, after marking out 21 inches, we want to divide that 21 inches into 2, and that is going to give us 10.5 inches. Now we're going to mark 10.5 inches at the middle here just to divide the pattern in 2. So I'm going to mark 10.5 inch all the way down and rule a straight line again. Now I'm going to go ahead to label them front and back. Now this is our waistline, and then this is our hip line. So on the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4. So I'm going to mark that at that waistline point, our waist measurement divided by 4. So I'm going to go ahead to mark that out. Next, we're going to move down to our hip line, and we're going to mark our hip measurement divided by 4. So you want to go ahead to mark your hip measurement divided by 4 on the hip line here. So I've gone ahead to do that. Next, we're going back to our waistline to mark out our darts. So for the dart, you want to work with the nipple to nipple measurement we used earlier. So we're going to mark our nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 on this point here, the way you see me doing. And then from that point, we're going to go to the hip line area to mark the same thing and go up from that hip line. We're going to go up from the hip line by 2 inches, and then we're going to rule a straight line all the way to that point I just marked. After creating our dart leg, we want to go ahead to take out ½ inch on both sides of the dart leg, and then we're going to draw this all the way down to create the dart for the skirt. So we're taking out 1 inch dart on the skirt because this is a skirt. If you were working on a full dress that would connect your upper bodice to your lower bodice, you'd want to readjust this. In subsequent videos, we would make that so you know what I'm talking about. Now I'm returning the 1 inch that I took back to the other side to complete our measurement, and I'm drawing this from our waistline all the way to our hip line. Now on the back piece, we're also going to do the same thing. We're going to mark our waist measurement divided by 4. I'm going to mark that at that point, and then we're going to mark our hip measurement as well divided by 4. After marking that out, we want to go ahead to move on back to the waist measurement to create our dart for the back. So I'm marking 4 inches there, and then from that point we're going to come down by 5 inches because the dart for the back should not be as long as the dart at the front. So we're going to go ahead to rule this out to create our dart leg now, and then we're going to take out ½ inch on both sides. You can see that I went ahead to mark 5 inches from that point because the dart should not be too long. And now I'm marking out ½ inch on both sides to create our back dart, and then we're going to draw this to meet each other at that point we created. Next, we're going to return the 1 inch that we took here back into the other side, so our skirt measurement for the waist is equal. Now we're going to rule this from the waist down to the hip line the way we did for the front. Now all you have to do is from our hip line, we're going to rule this straight down back into the line we created at that midpoint there. Now I'm going to go ahead to take out ½ inch at this part here to eliminate bulging at the back of our skirt. So I'm just going to go ahead to trace this back into my measurements. So this is basically all you need to do if you're trying to draft a straight skirt. Take note that we've not gone ahead to add our zipper allowance at this point here. So if you're working on a straight skirt, this is the only thing you have to do. But if you're working on a pencil skirt, you want to go ahead to go in by 1 inch or 1.5 inch. For me, I'm going to work with 1 inch. I'm marking 1 inch inwards. You can go as far as 1.5 inches, but you don't have to do it too much. And now I'm going to retrace it like this, the way you see me doing. So that is what you want to do if you want to achieve a pencil skirt effect. And then on this part here, I like to go in by 0.75. Sorry that part wasn't visible, but I basically just marked out 0.75 at that point, and then we're going to trace this back into our measurements the way you see me doing right now. This is going to help us shape our bum at the back part there. Now we're going to go ahead to, from that point, to mark our zipper allowance. So now I'm going to show you how to add the zipper allowance if you're working on a straight skirt and if you're working on a pencil skirt. So I'm going to use another marker so you understand what I'm trying to explain. I'm now going to rule out that point there. So this one is going to be for the straight skirt method. So for the straight skirt, you just basically want to have your straight line at that point, and then you add your allowance. Sorry that part wasn't in frame, but I basically went ahead to mark 1.5 inch allowance from the top to the bottom, and I ruled a straight line at that point. This is going to be if you're working on a skirt and you do not want the slit to be too revealing at the back. All you have to do is just add your zipper allowance all the way down, and then you sew. You're also going to take out the ½ inch we took out on that point. So I'm going to mark that out now and then retrace it at that point, because you want to eliminate bulging at the butt area. So now the allowance we created here is going to serve as our zipper allowance. And then if you want to have a slit that when you're walking, the slit is sort of open at the back and free for you to walk with, you want to go ahead to mark this out from this point. You want to determine, depending on what you want or what your client wants, then you want to go ahead to mark this out. For me, I'm marking out 14 inches and I'm going to rule this out. So from that 14 inches part where I just ruled out, I'm just going to go ahead to take this down the way you see me doing right now. So we're going to go ahead to cut out the remaining part and then leave that part open. So when you sew this part here, you will not be needing that part anymore, and then you have like an opening at the back. So the rest part at the top is going to serve as our zipper allowance. I hope you understand. If you have any questions, you can leave it in the comment section below and I'll try my best to answer your questions. Now we're going to work on the zipper allowance for the pencil skirt. So I'm bringing back the blue marker so you understand, and I'm just marking out 1.5 inches following that blue marker we had created earlier. I'm just using that to just mark this out all the way down. We're also going to curve this part out because, like I said earlier, we want to have an open slit at the bottom part. So you can see that I'm going ahead to use the marker to just create that. So this is the zipper allowance for the skirt, and this is what we have. So now we're going to move on to the waist area. So at the waist area, we want to go ahead to come up at the sides by ½ inch. On the front piece, we're coming out by ½ inch. So I'm going to go ahead to mark that out, and then on the inner part here, I'm going to go down by ½ inch, and then we're going to go ahead to curve this out. Now on the back, we're also going to come up by ½ inch, but we're not going to go down by ½ inch. We're only coming up by ½ inch. So I'm going to go ahead to trace that out and then take it back into our waistline. So this is what the front and the back pattern looks like. We're going to go ahead to cut them out. So guys, we're done drafting the front and back basic skirt pattern, and this is what we have. You can also go ahead to close up this dart if you'd like, or you can do this when you're sewing your skirt, whichever you prefer. But this is basically what we have at the end. Now we're going to move on to draft our basic sleeve pattern. Now to draft your basic sleeve pattern, you're going to need your sleeve length measurement, your armhole circumference. You're also going to need your sleeve cap height, your sleeve width, as well as your wrist measurement. Now our measurement is going to start from this line I created at the bottom part here. So from that line I made, I'm going to take note of what I have there, and we're going to divide it into two to get the midpoint. So after dividing it, I got 7.5 inches. I'm going to mark that out. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark out the full length of my sleeve, and for me I'm working with 23 inches. So I'm going to mark 23 inches across and then rule a straight line at the top. Now marking the midpoint at that top part there, and then we're going to distribute it all the way down and rule a straight line to create the midpoint of the sleeve. Now we're going to go ahead to mark out our cap height, and for me I'm going to work with 3.5. I went ahead to mark that out, and now I'm going to rule a straight line across. Now I'm going to label one side F and one side B, which is going to serve as the front as well as the back. Now on this new line we've gone ahead to create, I'm going to mark my armhole circumference divided by 2, and for me that is 7 inches. I'm going to mark 7 inches on both sides, and then I'm going to extend the lines to meet that 7 inches mark. Now we're going to take note of what we have on this our line here, and when I place my tape I'm going to have 14 inches. Now I'm going to divide 14 inches divided by 8, and that is going to give me 1.75 inches. So I'm going to take that measurement to this top part here, and I'm going to mark 1.75 on both sides of the line for the front and the back. I'm also marking 1.75 on this line here, and then we're going to divide that 1.75 into 2, and then whatever we have we're going to take it and mark it on the back part as you see me doing right now. Next, from our first line at the top, from that 1.75 mark we made, we're going to rule a straight line down to the one we made at the bottom, and then on the opposite side, the back part, we're also going to rule a straight line to meet the second mark we made as you see me doing right now. Next, we're going to take note of the 1.75 we took there, and we're going to mark it on this line here, and then the same 1.75 we took at this bottom part, we're going to mark it on this line as well as you see me doing right now. Now for the back part, we're going to take note of the 1.75 at the top here and then mark it on the line here, and then after marking that out, we're going to take note of what we have at the bottom part here, which is about 0.75, and we're going to mark it on this line right here. Now before we create the curve for our sleeve, we're going to go to our wrist area and we're going to mark our wrist measurement divided by 2 on both sides. For me that is 4 inches, so I'm marking 4 inches on both sides. Now you can just rule a straight line from that bottom part all the way to the top, but because I want this to be precise, I'm going to go ahead to mark my elbow, the length from my shoulder to my elbow. I'm going to mark that out and then rule a straight line, and then I'm going to take my measurements on both sides for that part and then just rule it all the way up. So whatever I have, I'm going to divide that into 2 and mark it on both sides. So you want to make sure you're folding your elbow area when you're taking the measurements, so it is not too tight and you can fold and move your arms on your when wearing the sleeve freely. So you want to also take note of that. Now you can see that I'm just ruling the lines from the top all the way to the bottom part. Now going back to the top part of our sleeve, from the midpoint here, we're going to curve this to meet with this point here. So I'm going to use my curve to just curve that all the way to that point. And then on the opposite side, we're also going to curve this all the way out. Just watch and you can see that what I'm doing is very self-explanatory. I'm just going to curve this from that point all the way down. Now we're going to do the same thing for the opposite side. So if you missed the first one, you can just pay close attention to what I'm doing on this opposite side as well. So this is what we have for the sleeve. This is how to draft your basic sleeve pattern. We're going to go ahead now to retrace this out with our marker so you see this clearly. Now after tracing that out, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the pattern. So guys, this is what we have for our sleeve pattern. I'm also going to go ahead to bring in the rest of the patterns we've gone ahead to create. This is what we have. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video and you found it helpful in any way, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, and if you enjoyed watching videos like this, you're also going to love this one, so you can go check it out, and I will see you guys on the next one.